Western about gold, murder, and revenge starring the Old Spice guy smells like a pretty good film to me. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Pass. Today I'm talking to you about Murder at Yellowstone City, which is coming to theaters, digital, and on demand on June 24th, 2022. It is a Western film set in Montana in the 1880s, and it's a story about gold, murder, and the search for justice that may or may not happen. It has a very interesting cast, and it has a beautiful setting. My hot take is I think you should ultimately rent it. It has a lot going for it. Like, the setting is amazing. I love the cast. It has such an interesting group of characters, and it has some really good music and some clever writing. But the film is a little bit long. It feels like maybe it was a little bit overly long, but it's a Western. Westerns are long movies anyways, so it's not a big issue. And it kind of devolves at the end into an exciting, but ultimately kind of conflicting ending. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the story, a few things I liked about this film, a few things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this review. If you don't want to know what happens at the end of this film, turn it off at the ending discussion. I'll keep it vague and spoiler free up until that point. But if you don't want to know what happens, and there are some big revelations that do happen towards the end, you might want to stop watching then. So in Murder at Yellowstone City, you have a small Montana town, Yellowstone City, that was a booming town in the gold rush days. It was hopping, everyone was there. But it has now fallen on hard times. The mine, I guess, stopped making gold. People had left. It is kind of a skeleton crew left in this town. And then a local prospector by the name of Dunnigan strikes gold. He finds a rich vein of gold. He's super excited. He's really happy. He's going to he's rich, and he's going to make this town revive as well, because the money that comes from that is going to build this town back up and make everyone return. But as you would imagine, a film called Murder at Yellowstone City, that dream doesn't last very long, and then the search happens for who killed him and why. And so that leads to a mysterious stranger who just entered town, some local townspeople trying to figure out what's going on, and a plot that has some twists and turns in it along the way. So things I liked about this movie, the first is, look, the environments. This film was filmed in Montana. They actually constructed this set for this film. The director Richie Gray and his team made this set to film Murder at Yellowstone City, and it shows. It is a beautiful set. It's a really nice large Western town, but the environments are just amazing. You have just kind of your typical Montana views of gorgeous mountains, beautiful nature scenery, miles and miles of empty space. It is something to behold, and it was really nice to see. It made me kind of wish to go travel and see some more places again, because it was something to behold. The second thing I loved is just the start of this movie. I thought it was a good way to kind of introduce the characters. I love Zach McGowan as Dunnigan. He kind of comes in super excited about this, about striking gold. He's over the top, and I was a little thrown off by him at the start, but he just seems like such a genuinely nice character. And it was a really fun way to kind of start this film and show just how much he loved this town, and how, the hard times. It's conveyed a lot in this very quick start, and I liked kind of how it introduced everyone, introduced the town's plight, and then got to the the subject of this film, the Murder at Yellowstone City. The third thing I really liked is the music. A Western film should have a few main components: beautiful scenery, horses and cowboys, and really great Western music. And this film has some just phenomenal music. It's epic. It feels very kind of like cowboy nature, but you have just some really beautiful score that helps to kind of emphasize the beautiful setting, and those two together just make this film feel so much bigger and so much more powerful. And the last thing I really liked is there is some clever writing. I didn't actually catch it on the first watch, but when I watched it again to prepare for an interview, there were some little hints that I caught that were just really fun to see, because once you know more about the story and the characters and maybe some of their backstory, some of the lines that they say do have some nice double meaning. And so that was really fun to see on a second viewing. I don't necessarily love when movies leave things to a second viewing for you to really understand, but this was a fun little thing to take away if you do watch it a second time. So things I didn't really love as much. The first, it's a long movie. There is a lot that happens. There's a kind of a greater overall plot and some things that occur later that kind of stem from the murder, but the movie itself does feel overly long. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes. Now I know it's a Western film, those tend to be longer, but I feel like maybe some parts in the middle could have been trimmed to make this at a more manageable runtime and make it kind of move a little. The second thing I did not love is there is some rough delivery, not a ton, but some of the lines do feel either overly emotional or just a little bit rough. It's not that bad, and like I said, I still enjoyed the film, and I liked the characters, and I liked kind of how interesting their backstories were, but there were some lines that just weren't delivered as naturally as I was hoping for. And that kind of threw me off just a little bit, but it's not a big deal. And the last thing that kind of really kind of stuck with me the most is that the ending in this film does kind of devolve. And I'm going to go into the ending now. So if you don't want to know what happens at the end of this film, turn this off because there will be spoilers. But the ending, it is a standard kind of Western trope. Like, this film has a lot of your Western tropes. You've got someone who strikes it rich, a crime that happens, a search for revenge, and then the ending has this big shootout that was exciting and big and bold, but it also didn't feel natural given some of the things that were happening in the town and some of the kind of conflicts that were happening. So let me go a little bit more into that. So film is Murder at Yellowstone City. So you have the murder of Dunnigan. That was the first big murder. It was right after he struck gold. You're like, why did this happen? Maybe the person wanted his gold. Maybe the person was angry that he had struck rich and that person hadn't. You don't really know why. It takes a while to figure out why. But the town instantly accuses this person, Cicero, who's played by Isaiah Mustafa, who had just ridden into town the day before. He's also a black cowboy, and so they instantly suspect, like, it must be him, right? He's the newcomer, he's black, we're just going to throw him in prison, like, he must have been the murderer. And they do find some gold on him. So, unfortunately for him, he doesn't really have any friends here, and he is kind of a quiet, pensive person. So he doesn't put up much of a fight for his innocence. He just kind of like is waiting for justice and hoping that justice will happen. And he is more like a quiet, pensive person. So when people come to see him, he tells them that he didn't do it, and there's no reason why. And he seems like a calm person that wouldn't have done this. And he starts to win over some people, but overall the town is against him. But he does win some friends who kind of believe him. And one of these people is she runs the stables. It's where Cicero stabled his horse. She was like, how could he have murdered this person? His horse was in the stables all night. Like, there's no way he could have gotten out there to do the murder. And obviously no one else in the town believes it, but she kind of becomes a vocal voice about this issue. And she also later finds a love note that was written for Dunnigan's wife, Rebecca. And so that then puts some more intrigue here. Like, Dunnigan's wife had a lover, and that probably could be a suspect of who killed Dunnigan. And so she kind of comes to the police with that. They sort of believe her, or so she then starts kind of making noise about that, and then she ends up dead. So someone is clearly trying to keep this whole thing quiet. As they search more and more for who the killer was, or at least the police ignore it, and other people around start searching, most notably the preacher and his wife Alice kind of come to Cicero's defense. They believe him. They kind of don't think that he could have done this, and they start kind of connecting, like, there's no way he could have done this because like, they start like thinking there's probably someone else. I think the killer gets a little more nervous, and so he also takes out Dunnigan's lover, Isabel. And so you have 3 murders and this kind of bubbling unrest, because everyone in the town thinks that Cicero keeps killing these people. The preacher and his wife know that he doesn't, so they're trying to keep him hidden. But eventually it boils over into a like larger conflict where the town rises up to take Cicero from the preacher, and the preacher and his wife and Cicero decide, like, okay, we are going to stop this. We're not going to let an innocent person die. Again, like, it's a Western trope, but then it devolves into like a large gunfight where you have the preacher and the preacher specifically, who had a more violent past. We find out that he used to be kind of a bandit, like an outlaw. And when he met his wife, he changed and kind of like turned over a new leaf and became a preacher to try to like leave that life behind. But he still had some remnants of it. So he has experience, but you would think if he's trying to save, make sure this innocent person doesn't die, he wouldn't then go on to like massacre the entire town. It is an exciting fight that involves, the preacher, his wife, Cicero, a couple of the painted ladies in town who are helping out. They believe Cicero, and they also don't like that Isabel, who was Dunnigan's lover and also one of the lead of the whorehouse in the town, that she was killed. So they also help stop this. But together they murder like, I don't know, 10, 15 people. Like, the town is essentially decimated at the end of this long fight. And so it was interesting because like that is a typical Western trope, this like big shootout at the end. But when you look at the kind of themes of what's happening, you're like, okay, so they're trying to prevent this innocent person from dying, so they're killing like scores and scores of people, and they like murder some. You know, some of it is like they're just shooting back trying to stop, but some of it they're just like Cicero's running away and he like turns around and shoots someone in the face, or the preacher's like got his hands up and then he like pulls his gun and like quick draw fire kills like 4 people at once. It was exciting. It kind of gave a bigger spectacle than this film had before, and it did have this movie end on a very, very exciting note. But when I thought more about it, I was like, this seems like excessive. It seems like they are essentially like decimating this town to save this one person, who then eventually just like rides away from town. He doesn't even stick around. So they're left with essentially a town that has no men and I guess a gold mine. So maybe that ends up actually being a net positive. But going back to the mystery of this film, you do actually find out who killed Dunnigan, the stable person, and Isabel. It was the sheriff's son, Jimmy. He had been at least obsessed with Rebecca Dunnigan, and so he ended up killing Dunnigan. I wasn't sure exactly if he had done it on his own or if he had done it at the like call of Rebecca Dunnigan. It seems like she was very upset that when Dunnigan struck gold, he came to the house and they are living in like squalor. They're barely getting by. He struck gold. He's rich. He's like, our life is going to change. And she seems genuinely excited about this. And then he's like, peace, I'm going to town to go see, you know, unspokenly to go see my mistress and go like tell the townspeople. So he goes to town, spends a bunch of money, makes the town really happy. And she seems very upset about this. She was like understandably angry that he struck gold. And then his first instinct is to go like see his mistress and see the town rather than like, you know, see her. But I don't really know if she could have gotten the message to Jimmy in that amount of time. Maybe she could. Maybe she like rode to see Jimmy in anger and then they kind of concocted this plan, or if Jimmy was just kind of upset that he had made her angry, or that he was rich and maybe he wanted, you know, to have that money. I'm not 100% sure why, but Jimmy is the one that ended up killing Dunnigan, and then he killed the other people to kind of cover up his crimes. Eventually he does get his comeuppance. During the fight, he gets shot. So that is the kind of the overall mystery of Murder at Yellowstone City. It does a pretty good job of hiding, you know, what happened until the third murder. The third murder is when you kind of see who it was and you kind of get some more information. But there is a good amount of time where you are unsure exactly who is the killer, which I liked. But overall, I thought the ending kind of, like I said, devolved. It was a little bit too much of a shift from the kind of mysterious start, and it did feel strange to kind of essentially decimate this town in order to save this town. But that was Murder at Yellowstone City. Like I said, it has a lot going for it. You should definitely check it out, especially if you're interested in Westerns. It is a beautiful Western. It has some really great visuals and a very interesting cast, and a story that has a surprising amount of complexity. So it's coming to theaters, digital, and on demand on June 24th, 2022. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.